The airlock doors opened with a hiss, and Yuna Kim stepped onto the mining station for the first time. Her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor as she walked through the corridor. Behind her, a small sleeping bundle rested against her back, wrapped in a special carrier that kept him safe and warm. Yuna was not worried. She had done this before, though never in space. When she worked on Earth, little Minjae had been with her through every job. At 8 months old, he knew the sound of machines and the smell of engine oil better than most children knew their own homes. The station was called Horizon's Edge. It floated in deep space, surrounded by asteroids full of rare minerals. 7 different alien species worked here, pulling valuable rocks from space and sending them back to their home worlds. Humans were still new to this part of the galaxy. Yuna was only the 3rd human engineer to work on this station. Commander Daeho met her at the entrance to the engineering bay. He was older, with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes that came from too many years in artificial light. He shook her hand and smiled, but his eyes moved to the carrier on her back. "Yuna Kim, reporting for duty, sir," she said. "Welcome aboard," Daeho replied. He looked at Minjae, who was still sleeping peacefully. "I see you brought your son." "Yes, sir. I explained this in my application. He goes where I go." Daeho nodded slowly. "I remember. The company approved it. But I should warn you, the alien crew might find it strange." "They'll get used to it," Yuna said simply. The engineering bay was huge, filled with machines and computer screens and pipes that carried fuel and water and air throughout the station. 3 aliens were already working when Yuna entered. They all stopped and stared. The first was Tikar, a Vrex. His body looked like a giant insect, with 6 arms and eyes that could move in different directions. He clicked his mandibles together when he saw Minjae. The second was Srith, a saurian who looked like a large lizard standing on 2 legs. Her scales were deep green, and her yellow eyes narrowed as she studied Yuna's back. The third was Kristen 7, a Thane made of living crystal. Light moved through his body in patterns that showed his thoughts. Right now, those patterns looked confused. "Greetings," Yuna said, giving a small bow. "I'm Yuna, your new engineer." Tikar stepped forward, his many eyes focused on Minjae. "Why is the larva attached to you?" Yuna adjusted the carrier straps. "This is my son, Minjae. Human babies need constant care. They can't survive alone." "But you are here to work," Srith said, her tongue flicking out. "How can you work with offspring attached?" "The same way I do everything else," Yuna replied calmly. "I've been an engineer for 6 years. Minjae has been with me for 8 months. We managed just fine." Kristen 7's light patterns shifted to something that might have been curiosity. "Among my people, new crystals grow in deep caves. They need no supervision. This attachment seems inefficient." "Maybe," Yuna said. "But it's how humans do things." Daeho cleared his throat. "Yuna's records are excellent. She's here to help us meet our mining quotas and keep the station running. Her personal arrangements are her own business, as long as safety protocols are followed." The aliens exchanged looks that Yuna couldn't quite read, but they said nothing more. Tikar returned to his workstation. Srith went back to checking fuel lines. Kristen 7 continued analyzing mineral samples. Yuna took her assigned station and began reviewing the system diagnostics. Minjae stirred on her back, making small baby sounds, and settled again. She reached back and patted him gently without looking away from her screen. The first few hours passed quietly. Yuna worked on updating the life support system software. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, and she occasionally hummed soft songs that kept Minjae calm. The baby woke once, and she took a short break to feed him from a bottle she kept in her supply pack. Then he was asleep again, and she went back to work. Tikar kept watching her from across the bay. His species had thousands of offspring at once, and they all scattered after hatching. The idea of carrying one everywhere seemed wrong to him. Wasteful, dangerous, but he had to admit, Una was good at her job. She found 3 errors in the code that he had missed. She fixed a problem with the air recycler that had been making strange noises for weeks. And she did it all with a sleeping infant on her back. When the shift ended, Daeho called Una to his office. She stood in the doorway, Minjae now awake and looking around with wide, curious eyes. "You did good work today," Daeho said. "Thank you, sir. But I need to ask, are you sure about this? Space stations are dangerous places. What if something happens?" Una was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Commander, I could have taken a ground job on Earth. I could have worked in a safe office somewhere. But this position pays 3 times as much, and that money means Minjae will have a good life. A safe future. So yes, I'm sure. And if the crew can't accept it, then they'll have to pretend they don't see him," Una said. "Because I'm not changing." Daeho almost smiled. "Fair enough. Dismissed." That night, in the crew quarters, the aliens gathered to talk. Tikar was agitated, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "This is wrong. Offspring should not be in workplaces." "Yet she performs well," Kristen 7 said. "I monitored her efficiency. It matches or exceeds station standards." "It makes me uncomfortable," Srith hissed. "The small one is so fragile. What if it breaks?" "We should request a replacement," Tikar said. But Daeho, who was listening from his own quarters, sent a message to the crew channel. It was simple and clear. Engineer Una follows all safety rules. Her work is excellent. The child is properly secured in a radiation-shielded carrier. There is no problem here. We continue as normal. The aliens read the message and said nothing more. They would work with the human and her strange ways. They would do their jobs and ignore the small creature on her back. They would pretend not to notice. But deep down, each of them felt something strange and uncomfortable. Something they didn't understand. Una put Minjae to bed in their small quarters and lay down beside him. Tomorrow would be another day of work. Another day of proving that humans could do anything, even with their babies on their backs. She closed her eyes and smiled. Everything was going to be fine. 3 weeks passed, and Una became the best engineer on Horizon's Edge. Everyone knew it. Though most of the alien crew would never say it out loud, she fixed problems before they became emergencies. When the water recycler started making grinding sounds, she took it apart and found a crack in the main pump that no one else had seen. When the gravity generator in Section 4 began to fail, she crawled into the maintenance shaft with Minjae on her back and repaired it in half the expected time. Minjae was always there, sometimes sleeping, sometimes awake and looking around with bright eyes, sometimes making baby sounds that echoed through the engineering bay. Una worked around his schedule like it was the most natural thing in the world. Feed him, change him, put him back in the carrier, and return to fixing the station's countless problems. The alien crew found it deeply disturbing. Tikar watched her one morning as she balanced on a ladder, adjusting power cables near the ceiling. Minjae was asleep on her back, his small head bobbing slightly with each movement his mother made. One wrong step, and both of them could fall. "This is madness," Tikar muttered to Kristen 7. "The larva is in constant danger." "Yet she never drops it," Kristen 7 observed. "I have been calculating the risk factors. She moves more carefully with the offspring attached. Her accident rate is actually lower than ours." "That's not the point," Tikar clicked. "It's wrong, unnatural." But neither of them said anything to Una. They just watched and tried to understand. Srith was having her own problems with the situation. As a Saurian, she laid eggs and left them to hatch on their own. Strong offspring survived. Weak ones did not. This was the way of nature. But humans seemed to fight nature at every turn. She cornered Deho in the corridor one day, blocking his path with her large body. "We need to discuss the human female. Yuna?" Deho said calmly. "What about her?" "She takes the offspring into dangerous areas. Yesterday, she entered the fuel processing room. The fumes alone could harm it. Did you check her safety logs?" Shrith's eyes narrowed. "No. She requested and received a chemical filter mask size for infants. The baby wore it the entire time. She followed every protocol." Deho stepped around the tall Saurian. "Is there anything else?" "It's still wrong." "That's your opinion," Deho said. "Not a station regulation." Shrith watched him walk away and hissed softly to herself. Humans were strange creatures. Stubborn. Impossible to reason with. The real test came 5 weeks after Yuna arrived. An emergency alert woke the entire station at 3 in the morning. One of the mining drones had malfunctioned and crashed into the station's hull. Air was leaking from Section 7, and the automatic seals weren't closing. Everyone rushed to the engineering bay. Yuna arrived last, wearing her night clothes with Minjae strapped to her chest instead of her back. The baby was crying, upset at being woken so suddenly. "Situation report," Deho ordered. Ticker brought up the damage display. "Hull breach in Section 7, maintenance level. The coolant system is also damaged. We're losing both air and coolant fluid. If we don't fix it within the hour, we'll have to evacuate the entire section. Can we seal it remotely?" Deho asked. "No," Kristen 7 replied. "Someone must go into the maintenance shafts and seal the breach manually." Everyone looked at the display. The maintenance shafts in that section were small and tight. Built for emergency repairs, they wound through the station's walls like narrow tunnels. Most of the crew wouldn't fit. "I'll go," Yuna said. Shrith spun to face her. "You? With the offspring?" "The shafts are too small for most of you. I'm the only one who can fit and who knows the coolant system well enough to fix it quickly." Yuna bounced gently, trying to calm Minjae. "I've been in smaller spaces." "This is insane," Ticker said. "The larva will interfere." "He'll be fine," Yuna said simply. She turned to Deho. "Permission to proceed, sir?" Deho looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Do it. But be careful." Yuna grabbed her toolkit and headed for the access hatch to Section 7. The other engineers followed on their monitors, watching as her headlamp appeared in the camera feeds. The maintenance shaft was barely wide enough for an adult human. Yuna had to crawl on her hands and knees, pulling her toolkit behind her. Minjae had stopped crying but was still fussing, making unhappy sounds against her chest. "Little one," Yuna whispered as she crawled. "We're just going to fix something. Then we can go back to bed." The alien crew watched in silence. They saw her squeeze through spaces that looked impossible. They saw her pause to adjust Minjae's position, making sure he could breathe easily. They saw her reach the breach and begin working with one hand while the other supported her son. "She's humming," Kristen 7 said suddenly. "Listen, she's making sounds to calm the offspring while she works." They could hear it over the comm system. A soft, wordless song that seemed to suit the baby. Minjae's fussing stopped, and he settled against his mother's chest. Yuna worked for 30 minutes in that cramped space. She sealed the coolant leak first, then patched the hull breach with quick-setting foam. Her movements were careful and precise. Never rushed, never panicked. "Breach sealed," she finally reported, returning to the bay. When she emerged from the access hatch, covered in coolant fluid and sweat, the entire crew was waiting. Minjae was asleep again, somehow peaceful despite everything. "Good work, Yuna," Deho said. She just nodded and headed back to her quarters to clean up and put Minjae in his proper bed. The crisis was over, but something had changed. The next day, Ticker noticed that someone had adjusted the lighting in the engineering bay. The overhead lights were slightly dimmer, better for infant eyes. He checked the logs and saw that Srith had made the change during the night shift. When he asked her about it, she just hissed and said, "The lights were too bright. It was bothering me." But Tikkar knew the truth. The Saurian female had changed the lights for the human baby. Later that week, Kristen 7 began spending his off hours researching human child development. He told himself it was pure scientific curiosity. He wanted to understand this inefficient species and their strange parenting methods. But really, he was trying to understand why Yuna had taken her offspring into danger without hesitation. Why she had crawled through maintenance shafts with a baby on her chest. Why she had hummed songs while repairing critical systems. The answer was simple, but completely alien to him. Because leaving Minjae behind was never an option. Not even for a second. Not even when it would have been easier or safer. Humans, he was learning, did not abandon their young. Not for convenience. Not for efficiency. Not for anything. The alien crew was beginning to understand. But they still pretended not to notice the baby on Yuna's back. It was easier that way. The asteroid hit at 2:47 in the afternoon. No one saw it coming. It was small, no bigger than a vehicle, and it had been hidden in the shadow of a larger rock. When it struck the station's outer ring, the impact shook everything. Alarms screamed throughout Horizon's edge. Yuna was in the middle of calibrating a sensor array when the station lurched. She grabbed the console to keep from falling, her other hand automatically going to support Minjae on her back. The baby woke up and started crying. All crew to emergency stations. Daeho's voice came over the speakers. "We have a critical situation." Within minutes, everyone was crowded into the command center. The main display showed the damage report, and it was bad. The asteroid had punched through 3 layers of hull and destroyed part of the main reactor's cooling system. "Radiation levels are rising," Kristen 7 reported, his crystal body flickering with urgent patterns. "If we cannot repair the damage within 2 hours, the reactor will overheat, and we will have to evacuate the entire station." "Can we repair it?" Daeho asked. Tik single quotes Char studied the schematics with all 6 of his arms moving across different screens. "The damage is in the reactor chamber itself. Someone would need to enter the chamber and replace the damaged coolant pipes manually." "How long would that take?" Srith asked. 40 minutes. Maybe 45. A heavy silence fell over the room. Everyone knew what that meant. The reactor chamber was already flooded with radiation. 40 minutes of exposure at those levels would be deadly to most species. "I will go," Ticker said finally. "My people have the best radiation resistance among the crew." Kristen 7's lights dimmed. "Your survival probability is 17%. You would die before completing the repairs." "Then we evacuate," Srith said. "We leave the station." "The escape pods only hold 30 people," Daeho said quietly. "We have 42 crew members on board. And it would take 3 hours to reach the nearest rescue vessel." No one spoke. The math was simple and terrible. Someone had to fix the reactor, and whoever did it would probably die. Yuna shifted Minjae to her front carrier and stepped forward. "I'll do it." Every eye in the room turned to her. "Humans have better radiation resistance than most species," she continued calmly. "Our bodies can take more damage and repair themselves. I have the best chance of surviving long enough to finish the repairs." "You have offspring," Srith said, her voice unusually quiet. "You cannot. That's exactly why I have to," Yuna interrupted. "Minjae needs this station to survive. We all do. If the reactor fails, everyone dies. Including my son." Daeho looked at her steadily. "Are you sure about this?" "Yes, sir." "Then you have my authorization." He turned to the others. "Get her a radiation suit. The heavy kind." and prepped the emergency medical bay. Yuna nodded and started to move toward the equipment room. Then she stopped. She stood very still for a moment, and everyone watched as she slowly reached up and began unbuckling the carrier straps. It was the first time anyone had seen her take it off. She lifted Minjae out and held him close, pressing her face against his soft hair. The baby was still fussy from all the noise and movement. He didn't understand what was happening. Yuna turned and looked at Tikar. The insectoid engineer stepped back nervously. "Hold him," Yuna said. "I what?" "No, I don't know how to hold him," Yuna repeated, firmer this time. "Support his head and back. Keep him upright. I'll be back in 40 minutes. She placed Minjae in Tikar's upper arms before he could protest. The Vrex froze, terrified. The small human was so warm, so soft, so impossibly fragile. He could crush it with one wrong movement. "Don't drop him," Yuna said. Then she turned and walked out of the command center. The door closed behind her, and suddenly the aliens were alone with a human baby. Minjae looked at Tikar's insect face and started to cry. "What do I do?" Tikar panicked, holding the baby as far from his body as possible. "It's making distress sounds." "Bring it closer," Kristen 7 suggested. "Warmth. Human young need warmth." Tikar carefully pulled Minjae closer to his thorax. The crying got louder. Srith approached cautiously, her clawed hand reaching out to touch the baby's head. "So small," she whispered. "How do they survive?" "They don't," Deho said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "Not without constant care. Human babies are born helpless. They can't walk, can feed themselves, can't regulate their own temperature. For months, they're completely dependent on their parents. That's why Yuna never puts him down. Because without her, he dies." "That's barbaric," Srith said. "Why would nature create offspring so weak?" "It's not weakness," Deho replied. "It's strategy. Human brains are too big to fit through the birth canal if we develop fully. So we're born early and finish growing outside. Those helpless months? They're when we form our strongest bonds. When we learn trust and cooperation. That's why humans never abandon each other. We're wired for it from birth." Tikar was still holding Minjae awkwardly while the baby cried. He tried bouncing like he'd seen Yuna do. Too hard. The crying got worse. "Gentler," Deho said. "And hum." She always hums to him. "I don't know human songs," Tikar clicked nervously. "Any sound will work. Just something rhythmic and calm." Tikar began making a low clicking sound, a pattern from his own world's lullabies. To everyone's surprise, Minjae's crying softened a little. Not much, but enough to give them hope. Meanwhile, Yuna was putting on the radiation suit. It was heavy and clumsy, with layers of lead and ceramic designed to block deadly particles. She checked the seals 3 times, then picked up her toolkit in the command center. They watched her progress on the monitors. She entered the reactor chamber, and the radiation readings on her suit immediately started climbing. "Timer started," Kristen 7 announced. 40 minutes maximum exposure. Yuna worked fast but carefully. The damaged coolant pipes were twisted and melted from the impact. She had to cut them away and install new ones, making sure each connection was sealed perfectly. One mistake and the entire reactor could fail. 20 minutes passed. 30. The radiation counter on her suit was in the red zone. In the command center, Minjae had finally stopped crying. He was resting against Tikar's thorax, making small hiccuping sounds. The Vrex had discovered that gentle rocking and rhythmic clicking worked to calm the small. Human. Shrith was watching Yuna on the monitor. "She's moving slower," the Saurian said. "The radiation is affecting her." It was true. Yuna's hands were shaking now. She had to stop twice to steady herself. But she kept working. 35 minutes, Kristen7 said. Deho activated his comm. Yuna, how much longer? Almost done, her voice came back, tight with pain. Just need to seal the final connection. Your suit readings are critical. You need to exit now. Not until it's finished. 38 minutes. 39. Yuna's hands were barely working, but she managed to tighten the last bolt and activate the emergency coolant flow. Green lights appeared on the reactor controls. Repairs complete, she gasped. Coolant system restored. Reactor temperature dropping. Get out of there, Deho ordered. They watched as Yuna stumbled out of the reactor chamber. She made it to the decontamination room and began the emergency cleaning cycle. When she finally removed the suit, they could see her face on the monitor. She was pale and shaking, her skin already showing the red marks of radiation burn. But she was alive. The medical team rushed her to the bay. As they carried her past the command center, Yuna's eyes found Tikar holding Minjae. Is he okay? She whispered. He's fine, Tikar said, and he was surprised to find he meant it. We kept him safe. Yuna smiled, and then she passed out. The aliens stood in silence, Minjae sleeping peacefully in Tikar's arms. They had just witnessed something they didn't fully understand but could no longer ignore. A human mother had walked into certain death to save her child. And she had trusted them, these strange aliens she barely knew, to protect what mattered most to her. That trust was a weight they would carry forever. Yuna woke up in the medical bay 2 days later. Her body ached everywhere, and her skin felt like it was on fire. The radiation had done its damage, but the human body was tough. Already her cells were working to repair themselves. The first thing she did was look for Minjae. He's here, a voice said. Hyunwoo Park, the station's human medic, appeared beside her bed. He was holding Minjae, who was sleeping peacefully. He's been fine. The crew has been taking turns watching him. Yuna tried to sit up. Pain shot through her body, and she gasped. Don't move yet, Hyunwoo said gently. You took enough radiation to kill most people. You need rest. Let me hold him, Yuna said. Please. Hyunwoo carefully placed Minjae in her arms. The baby stirred, opened his eyes, and saw his mother. His face lit up with recognition, and he made happy sounds. Yuna felt tears running down her face. She didn't remember starting to cry. I thought I might not see him again. But you did, Hyunwoo said, because you're stubborn and incredibly lucky. The door to the medical bay opened, and Tikar entered hesitantly. Behind him were Srith and Kristen7. They all looked uncomfortable. We wanted to check on you, Tikar clicked softly, to see if you survived. I survived, Yuna said with a weak smile. Thanks to all of you. I heard you took care of Minjae. It was difficult, Tikar admitted. He cried for a long time. I didn't know what to do. But you figured it out, Yuna said. That's what matters. Srith stepped closer to the bed. The large Saurian looked down at Minjae with her yellow eyes. I have been thinking, she said slowly, about why you did what you did. Why you entered the reactor chamber. Someone had to, Yuna said. No, you wanted to. Because if you didn't, we would all die, including your offspring. Srith's tongue flicked out. My people would never do this. We don't risk ourselves for eggs. But you risked everything for everyone. For strangers. For aliens you barely know. You're my crew, Yuna said simply. That makes you family. The words seemed to confuse all three aliens. Kristen7's light patterns shifted to something uncertain. Family? But we are not related to you. Family isn't just about blood, Hyunwoo explained, speaking up from where he was preparing medicine. For humans, family is anyone you care about. Anyone you protect. Like offspring? Tikar asked. Exactly like that, Yuna said. She held Minjae closer. I protect my son because he's helpless and depends on me. But I also protect my crew because we depend on each other. That's how humans work. Srith made a thoughtful hissing sound. This explains much. When you gave the offspring to Tikar, you trusted us completely. You left your most vulnerable possession in our care. He's not a possession, Yuna corrected gently. He's a person. But yes, I trusted you. Because I had to. And you proved I was right to trust you. Over the next 2 weeks, Yuna slowly recovered. The radiation burns healed, though they left marks that would never completely fade. Hyunwoo told her she was lucky to be alive, but the real change was in the alien crew. They had learned something during those 40 minutes when they cared for Minjae. They had felt the weight of responsibility, the fear of making a mistake, the relief when the baby finally stopped crying and slept peacefully. They had experienced, just for a moment, what it meant to protect something completely helpless, and it had changed them. Tikar was the most obvious. He stopped complaining about Minja's presence in the engineering bay. In fact, he started doing small things to make the space more comfortable. He adjusted his work schedule so the noisiest tasks happened when Minjae was awake and alert, not during his nap times. He even installed a small padding on the edge of Yuna's workstation so the hard metal wouldn't hurt Minjae if the baby accidentally bumped against the dot when asked about these changes. Tikar just clicked his mandibles and said, "Safety improvements." Nothing more. Srith changed too. She began flying the transport ships more smoothly when Yuna was on board. No sudden turns or heartbreaking. Once, when another pilot complained about her slow flying style, Srith hissed at him and said, "I fly as I choose. If you want dangerous flying, request a different pilot." But everyone knew the real reason. The human baby was on board, and Srith refused to risk hurting it with her flying. Kristen 7 was the most fascinating change. The Thane spent hours researching human development and child care. He learned about developmental milestones, proper nutrition, and baby-safe materials. Then he started synthesizing small toys from the minerals they mined. He left them in the engineering bay without explanation. A smooth crystal shaped like a ring that Minjae could hold. A soft cloth made from processed fibers. A rattle that made gentle sounds. Yuna found them and knew exactly who had made them. "Thank you, Kristen," she said. The Thane's lights flickered with something that might have been embarrassment. "It is simply efficient use of materials." Nothing more. But they both knew the truth. One day, Yuna was working on a difficult repair when Minjae started fussing. He was hungry and wet and uncomfortable. She needed to take a break, but the repair couldn't wait. Before she could figure out what to do, Tikar appeared beside her. "Give him to me," the Vrex said. "I will care for him while you work." Yuna stared at him. "Are you sure?" "I have been studying human infant care," Tikar said, almost defensively. "I know what to do now. Feed him, change his waistcloth, hold him until he sleeps. I am capable of these tasks." Yuna carefully lifted Minjae out of the carrier and placed him in Tikar's arms. The Vrex held the baby confidently now, not awkwardly like before. He had learned. "I'll be quick," Yuna said. "Take your time," Tikar replied. "He is safe with me." And Minjae was. The baby settled against Tikar's thorax, listening to the gentle clicking sounds the Vrex made. Within minutes, he was asleep. Yuna worked faster than she ever had before, knowing her son was being cared for by someone she trusted. When she finished and came to collect Minjae, she found Tikar still holding him, rocking gently. "Thank you," she said softly. "It is nothing," Tikar said. But his mandibles clicked in a pattern that Yuna had learned meant contentment. That night, Hyunwoo found Yuna in the observation deck, looking out at the stars with Minjae in her arms. "You did something amazing," he told her. "You made aliens understand what it means to be human." "I didn't do anything special," Yuna said. I just did my job. No. You showed them that humans don't choose between duty and family. We carry both. We protect both. We never leave anyone behind. Hyunwoo smiled. That's why they're afraid of us, you know? Not because we're strong or smart, but because we'll do anything for the people we love. Yuna looked down at Minjae, who was awake and staring at the stars with wide, curious eyes. I hope he grows up knowing that he's never alone, that there are people who will always protect him. He will, Hyewoo said, because you are teaching him. And now, this whole crew is teaching him too. In the engineering bay, Kristen 7 was synthesizing another toy. In the transport bay, Srith was programming even smoother flight patterns. In his quarters, Ticker was reading human child development guides. They were pretending not to notice, pretending they didn't care. But everyone knew the truth. The team had adopted a human cub, and they would protect him with their lives. 4 months had passed since the reactor crisis. Yuna's radiation scars had faded to thin white lines on her arms and neck. Minjae was now 1 year old and starting to make sounds that almost resembled words. He could sit up on his own, grab things with purpose, and had a favorite toy crystal rattle that Kristen 7 had made. The station had changed in ways both obvious and subtle. The lighting in all work areas was now softer, better for young eyes. The sharp corners on equipment had been padded. The air filtration system ran on a quieter setting during certain hours. No one officially announced these changes. They just happened. When new crew members arrived on Horizon's Edge, they received a briefing that included an unusual note. Engineer Yuna works with her offspring present. This is normal. Proceed with regular operations. Most aliens found this confusing until they saw it for themselves. Then they either adapted or requested transfer. Most chose to adapt. On this particular morning, Yuna was teaching Ticker a new repair technique when Commander Daeho's voice came over the speakers. All senior crew to the docking bay. We have a new arrival. Yuna looked up from her work. New arrival? We weren't expecting anyone for another week. Emergency transfer, Daeho's voice said. Just get down here. The docking bay was crowded when Yuna arrived. The entire senior crew was present, watching as a transport ship connected to the station's airlock. The doors opened with their familiar hiss. A young woman stepped through, wearing the standard engineer's uniform. She had short dark hair and tired eyes. And on her chest, strapped in a carrier very similar to Yuna's, was a small baby. The new arrival's eyes found Yuna immediately, and her whole face relaxed with relief. Thank the stars, the woman said. They told me there was another human parent on this station. I was worried they were lying. Yuna stepped forward with a smile. I'm Yuna. This is Minjae. She gestured to her son, who was watching the new baby with great interest from his position on her back. I'm Sora Jang, the woman said. This is Bomi. She's 5 months old. Sora looked around at all the alien faces staring at her. I hope this won't be a problem. The company said it was approved, but the transport crew seemed very uncomfortable during the flight. It's not a problem, Daeho said firmly. He stepped forward and shook Sora's hand. Welcome to Horizon's Edge. You'll find we're used to human parents here. Tikar moved closer to examine the new baby. Bomi stared at his insectoid face and giggled. The sound made Tikar's mandibles click with pleasure. Another small one, he said. This one is even tinier than Minjae was. They grow fast, Yuna assured him. Give it time. Srith approached and studied Sora with her sharp yellow eyes. You will need living quarters near the engineering bay, and your work schedule will need flexibility for feeding times. Yes, that would help, Sora said, clearly surprised. It is already arranged, Srith continued. We have experience with human parenting requirements now. Kristen Seven's lights flickered in a welcoming pattern. I have been preparing educational materials. Human offspring development data suggests that social interaction with peers is beneficial. The two small ones can be together sometimes. Sora looked completely overwhelmed. You planned for this? Before I even arrived? We learned from Yuna, Tikar said simply. We know how to accommodate now. Over the next few days, Sora settled into station life. She was amazed at how smoothly everything worked. The crew adjusted work schedules without being asked. They spoke more quietly when Bomi was sleeping. They offered to hold the baby when Sora needed both hands for a repair. I worked on 2 other stations before this, Sora told Yuna one evening as they sat together in the common area. Both babies were asleep, tired from a long day. At both places, they treated me like I was broken or wrong for bringing Bomi. They kept suggesting I send her to a care facility somewhere. Made me feel like a failure. You're not a failure, Yuna said firmly. You're doing what humans have always done. Keeping family close. Working together. Surviving together. But how did you convince them? Sora gestured to the alien crew members scattered around the common area. They're so different from us. How did they understand? Yuna thought about the reactor chamber. About placing Minjay in Tikar's arms. About trusting complete strangers with the most precious thing in her life. I didn't convince them, she said. They learned on their own. By helping. By being trusted. By realizing that human families aren't a weakness. Sora watched as Tikar approached their table, carrying 2 cups of the nutritious drink humans preferred. I thought you might want refreshment, Devrek said, setting the cups down carefully. Then he looked at Bomi, sleeping in Sora's arms. The small one is peaceful today. This is good. Thank you, Tikar, Sora said, clearly touched. After he left, she turned to Yuna with tears in her eyes. I've never felt so accepted anywhere. Neither have I, Yuna admitted. But we built something here. Together, all of us. The weeks passed. Minjay and Bomi became fixtures on the station, as common a sight as computer screens and pressure suits. The alien crew stopped seeing them as strange or wrong. They just became part of the routine. When Minjay took his first wobbly steps in the engineering bay, the entire crew stopped work to watch. When he fell down, 3 aliens rushed forward to help before Yuna could even move. Tikar picked him up gently and set him back on his feet. Try again, small one, Devrek said. Humans are good at standing up after falling. Minjay laughed and took another step. One day, a new mining executive arrived to inspect the station. He was a tall Vrex with important markings on his shell, and he didn't know about the station's unofficial policies. He saw Yuna working with Minjay on her back and stopped, his mandibles clicking with disapproval. This is highly irregular, he said loudly. Offspring should not be in industrial work zones. I'm filing a safety complaint. Before Yuna could respond, Tikar appeared beside the executive. Engineer Yuna has an excellent safety record, Tikar said coldly. 0 accidents in 9 months. Her efficiency ratings exceed station standards. The offspring is properly secured in approved equipment. But it's unprofessional, the executive started. She saved this station, Srith interrupted, landing on the deck with a heavy thump. Entered a reactor chamber with lethal radiation levels. Completed repairs that would have killed anyone else. If you have complaints about her professionalism, take them to someone who cares. Kristen 7 floated over, his lights burning bright. The presence of human offspring has improved station morale by 32%. Productivity has increased 14%. These are measurable facts. The executive looked around at the unified crew and seemed to realize he was outnumbered. I see, he said stiffly. Carry on. After he left, Yuna looked at her crew, her family, and felt something warm in her chest. "Thank you," she said softly. "We were just stating facts," Ticker clicked. But his mandibles moved in that pattern that meant affection. That night, Yuna stood in the observation deck with Minjae in her arms. He was getting heavy now, too big to carry all day like she used to. Soon he would walk on his own. Soon he would explore the station by himself, but not yet. For now, he was still small enough to hold close. Commander Daeho found her there. "You changed this place," he said. "You know that, right?" "I just did my job," Yuna said. "No, you showed them what humanity really means. Not our technology or our weapons or our strength, but our stubbornness, our refusal to give up on each other, our absolute certainty that no one gets left behind." Daeho looked out at the stars. "Other species abandon their weak. We carry ours. That's what makes us dangerous. That's what makes us strong." Yuna held Minjae closer. "I hope the galaxy understands that." "They will," Daeho said. "Because of people like you. Because of crews like this. We're teaching them, one station at a time." Below them, in the engineering bay, Ticker was synthesizing a new toy. Shrith was adjusting her flight schedules. Kristen 7 was researching the next stage of human child development. They still pretended not to notice the babies. Still claimed their accommodations were just practical efficiency improvements. Still maintained that human parenting was strange and unusual. But everyone knew the truth. The aliens had learned something precious and terrible. Humans never abandon their young. They carry them through fire and radiation and impossible odds. They carry them into danger and out again. They carry them until their arms ache and their backs hurt and their bodies fail. And if you threaten a human's child, you threaten the entire species. Because they will all come for you. Every single one. The galaxy was learning what it meant to face a species that brought their families to war. And maybe, just maybe, they were starting to understand why humans had survived so long against such terrible odds. Because humans never fight alone. They carry their future on their backs. And they never, ever give up. Yuna looked down at Minja's sleeping face and smiled. Tomorrow, she would work another shift with her son on her back. And the team would pretend not to notice. It was the way things worked now. It was the human way.